Serious, what is the scariest theory you know about? That theory about what happened on the missing Malaysian flight. From looking at the evidence in the most likely scenario, that being the pilot committing suicide, people have been able to piece together possible scenarios that happened on the plane. One of which is that shortly into the flight, the pilot deoxygenated the plane and accelerated to a high altitude, killing all on board very quickly. He then flew for hours and hours south before crashing the plane. It's scary to me because he would have been flying in an isolated part of the earth with nothing ahead of him other than the South Pole. That isolated plane, flying in the dark, with hundreds of dead strapped in their seats. The nearest city, Perth, is still asleep and only beginning to wake up. There is no one and nothing. To think of that man flying with all those bodies in the dark to nowhere is very scary. So selfish and cowardly, but also very scary. There was a very interesting article in The Atlantic about it. Link feedlantic.com/magazine/archive/2019/07/MH370 Malaysia Airlines/590,653/ The cabin occupants would have become incapacitated within a couple of minutes, lost consciousness, and gently died without any choking or gasping for air. The scene would have been dimly lit by the emergency lights, with the dead belted into their seats, their faces nestled in the worthless oxygen masks dangling on tubes from the ceiling. It's messed up, but I find it comforting the people on that flight died peacefully. I was in the airport in Barcelona early one morning, and when we landed we heard there was a plane that had crashed in the French Alps. My husband's phone was blowing up with people making sure our flights hadn't been changed. I think about those 150 people often, and that no one else ever saw them alive again after us. The thought of them descending in terror for 10 minutes before the plane crashed still makes me cry as hard as I did that day. Germanwings Flight 9525. The possibility that I'm just a brain in a jar and my entire life is just something my brain fabricated to keep itself entertained. Everything and everyone I have ever known is a figment of imagination. Every method I can conceive to prove this idea wrong is also just part of the dream logic my brain has created to make sense of the illusion that is my existence. Might not even be a brain at all. The true reality might be completely different with completely different physics, laws, and rules. Ours are the only ones that make sense to us because they're the only world we've lived in. You could be a pile of goop connected to a grid. We already know that true reality is different. Take radio waves for example. We don't have a sense in our bodies to detect them, but we know they are there. If we were to just gain another sense beyond R5 we would open up reality more. As Arctic permafrost melts, it will release diseases that have been frozen in the ground for thousands or tens of thousands of years, and life on Earth will have no immunity to them. Forgive me for this poor job I'm about to do describing it, since I forget the name of it, but I recently read here on Reddit that as humans have a defense mechanism where we can see something that is non-human, but mimicking a human such as a realistic wax figure, and know that something is off. The theory was that in our evolution there was a predator that could mimic being human that we had to adapt and develop this defense mechanism for. The rebuttal to this theory was that it comes from us seeing dead bodies through sickness or disease and not blatant Neanderthal murder or death from an animal. Through our evolution and learning that something is wrong / out of the ordinary and a cause for concern. We don't know whether the universe is in a true vacuum, lowest possible energy state, or a false vacuum, a local low, but not the lowest. If the universe is a false vacuum, at any point, at any moment, a quantum tunneling event could occur where that point spontaneously decays to a true vacuum. If that happened, a bubble would expand from that point at the speed of light that radically altered physics, instantly annihilating everything down to the subatomic level. Since it travels at sea, there'd be no warning, no way to see it coming. When it reached us, you'd just instantly blink out of existence. Even if we are in a false vacuum, such an event doesn't become likely for at least 10,139 years. But it could happen at any moment at any point. It could have already happened, and the bubble could be heading straight for us, about to end us at any T. The butterfly effect kind of freaks me out, because it suggests That every little action could be part of a series of events that leads to something much more impactful. For example, I could drop a pencil, which distracts someone for a few seconds, causing them to miss the bus, and after a few billion seemingly insignificant events, World War III begins. Epstein's Island has a dump site for the victims. I think this is the worst one in the whole thread. Fractalization theories. Everything that exists is a tiny part of a bigger thing. In a brief summary, our galaxy is a part of space, but is space a small part of something larger? Think of a smaller object containing its own galaxy. A speck of a rock may contain its own microscopic cosmos that we cannot see. It may be composed of its own organisms smaller than a single electron, and that civilization is more advanced than we are. We know all matter contains their own gravitational force, but we don't exactly know why. I've always believed this, but I never knew it had a name. The hypothesis that human life was seeded by another civilization. What if they come back? The Fermi paradox. Basically, we are either alone in the universe, or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. If we are alone, we will likely be stuck to our local solar system with a very basic understanding of what lies beyond, and practically zero chance of ever actually venturing beyond the outer reaches of our orbits. We may be doomed to live, grow, and die on a ball of iron and silica orbiting a giant ball of hydrogen in some forsaken arm of one of literally trillions of galaxies, each with trillions of their own stars. How many other habitable planets are there orbiting all those stars? How many have life that is advanced enough to receive and understand the signals we've been sending out for the last few decades? How many are a few million years ahead of us, or behind us in terms of their development? What if we are truly unique and we suffer a mass extinction that completely destroys life on Earth, down to the cellular level? If we are not alone, any civilization that is capable of reaching us from outside our local systems is for sure going to be many thousands, or possibly millions, of years advanced beyond anything we can comprehend. There's a ton of terrifying implications that can arise from this regarding life in the universe, but the one I find most scary is that, if we ever do make contact, humanity would stand zero chance in a war against extraterrestrial life. Because to get here in any reasonable time frame they would need an understanding of warp speed or superluminous travel. On that same theory, we could be alone now, but not in the past, or in the future, and we never know about it. It is not only space and distance, but time as well. The idea that human life as we know it is just a tiny blip on the timeline means there could have been literally millions of those tiny blips of 300,000 years already, and we will never know about them. Just knowing the sun will eventually expand and envelop the planet, leaving a burnt and blackened French fry behind is upsetting enough, even if all these other things never happen. That eventually will. Imagine being around as that slowly becomes reality. There's nothing after we die. All of our memories, experiences, thoughts, feelings, etc. just immediately blinked out of existence, and this seems like the most likely and realistic possibility to me. The transporter in Star Trek actually literally vaporizes you and then creates a perfect clone back on the planet or ship you are visiting. That means every episodes we see 3 or 4 different Spocks, Captain Kirks, etc. This is nowhere near the scariest one I have read in these comments, but the theory that the Mariana Trench's floor isn't actually a floor, but something else, potentially housing creatures from billions of years ago. Then the movie The Meg came out, and I wanted to study it even less, and the fact that most of Earth's oceans are unexplored, to me that is definitely terrifying. Then again, I hate how 70% of the Earth is just water and most of it is basically another world that we barely even discovered. Who the hell knows what lurking down there? Quantum suicide. The idea that there's hundreds of me that died and I'm one of the few alive in an infinite number of worlds. That the Big Bang is just a never-ending cycle. Each time the universe explodes into existence it will inevitably end, then the Big Bang restarts. Each iteration of existence is just a rerun of the Big Bang. The theory is likely called Big Bounce. The theory that the reason aliens haven't contacted us is because they're watching and waiting for us to be ready. The more I see of humanity, how we act under pressure, and when confronting our darkest parts especially, makes me worried that we'll never be ready, or that we'll wipe ourselves out first. Solipsism, which is a mind duck. Essentially, life is a holographic reality created by your own mind. It is the idea that you only know your mind, therefore you might be the only mind that exits. Since your mental state is private and unobservant to anyone else, you can only be sure of your own thoughts, and everything else is fake. The expanding universe theory, well, we know it's expanding. But the theory that says it has a limit of expanding, and once it reaches that, it'll snap back and crush the universe before expanding again and reforming it. The powerlessness and idea that tomorrow, everything I know could be crushed is a bit terrifying. 1. There is a chance of a zombie virus mutating from rabies virus. 2. Aliens do exist. Whether they are friendly or not, reachable or not, is not known. 3. Nuclear war will indeed destroy the world, where the most affected countries would be USA, UK, China, Russia, Pakistan and India. Anesthesia doesn't put you to sleep. You are fully aware of the surgery, unable to move or say anything. You forget all about it by the time it's over like a pleasant dream. If everything is predetermined, then that means we are quite literally dead people walking. That our existence is just a computer simulation controlled by our descendants. Us living in a simulation. The scariest part about it is knowing that we have absolutely no control over our lives, and anything bad that happens is just inevitable. Something goes wrong, and you try to learn for next time. Doesn't matter. It was always going to happen, and no matter what, it's likely going to happen again if it happened the first time. The fact that anything bad can whenever, and we have no control over it, is the scariest thing. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.